Computer. All right, all right. So today we're doing a podcast slash interview with Mr. Ralph Goicouria. This is Ben Toaff. Ralph, why don't you go ahead and do a little introduction for yourself? Tell them about yourself and your business.
Sure. Well, I got started in real estate right out of college. I bought my first rental property, borrowed money from my mom, told her I would pay her back in 2 years with a return on her investment. So I did that. I went ahead and took her money, bought my first property in 2003, got tenants to help me basically pay the mortgage, which is what they call now a house hack. Waited a couple years, the property went up in value. I sold it, returned my mom's money along with a nice profit. I took that, rolled it into the next property, and kept, duplicating that process. The only problem was I really didn't have a plan. I was just basically buying for speculation. So I would buy, pray that it would go up in value, and then sell it. I was at the time getting 80-20 loans. I was over leveraged. I didn't know any better. I didn't have reserves. Financial crisis came in, lost everything. And that's really when I started to cut my teeth in the real estate business. I started to help people short sell their properties, get out of foreclosure, understand the real estate sales process. Fast forward 2013, that's when I kind of started to get into real estate investing with an actual business model. We were buying properties at the auction at a discount. We're fixing them up. We're selling them for a profit. That started to get out of control as far as what people were willing to pay at the auction. And then, I ran into Ben, which is one of the wholesalers at the beginning when we first started that was selling properties off market. We were able to buy it at basically the same LTVs, but with a little bit more insurance. We were able to make sure we didn't get any properties with liens or violations or open permits. And we kind of worked our way through there. Now, at the current moment, we've fixed and flipped over 300 homes. And I'm also helping investors and teaching them how to navigate the real estate investment space.
And what areas do you typically focus on, and what price points are you usually buying these properties in, Ralph?
I get that question a lot. People ask me all the time, what areas? The areas change. It's basically when the numbers fall with the ratios that you need in order to make money. In other words, a spread. Once you have the spread that makes sense, the areas will then pop up. So when I first started fixing and flipping with you, I was finding properties with you. We were looking at Miami Gardens. We were looking at all the other spaces now that are virtually impossible to get into because the price has gone higher and the discounts are thinner. So it's more of a risk. It's higher
So
risk, lower
you're
reward.
talking about Dade County. What counties?
Dade and Broward, for the most part, some of Palm Beach is where we like to stick with. We're basically looking at our investing in our backyard,
Okay.
where we can kind of drive by the property. We're experts in the space. We can physically go and take, charge, take control if need be.
Okay. And what are what's your sweet spot as far as like price that you're buying at? I know the areas are changing because obviously they're appreciating, so certain areas are getting more expensive. But what price points do you like to buy at?
I like under 300, maybe under
Mhm.
325,000. It's not that I don't want to buy higher per se. It's just that once you get to a higher price point, the margins tend to be tighter. For example, if a wholesaler comes to me and says, "Hey, I got a sweet deal. We have $100,000 spread in the house. You can buy it at 600,000 and sell it for seven." That's not a deal for me because what it's going to cost me in commissions and closing costs and acquisition fees is going to be about 100,000 when it's all said and done. So there'll be zero spread if I do nothing to the property. And of course, the intention is to, force appreciation through the improvements of renovating the house.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Um, what would you say your best deal ever was? Like, tell us about your best deal that you ever had, and then also tell us about your worst deal that you ever had.
So the analogy I like to use is always like the baseball analogy. We want to get an inside the ballpark home run, which is basically a little bit of luck, fundamentals and just trying to get on base. So the best deals we've ever done weren't intentionally something we went into saying, "Hey, we're going to make X," and then we executed. It was more like a project that comes to mind was right after COVID. We bought a property in Shenandoah, and at the time, this was like top end for us. We paid, I think it was like 15 or something like that. And we were projecting to sell that one for like I think it was like 600. And when it was all said and done, we ended up selling it for 750, which was
Wow.
a nice pop in value. It did cost us a little bit more than expected, but then that was probably one of the better flips we've done.
So how much did you actually renovate? How much did you spend on the renovations?
We spent about 100 on the renovation, and we made net profit almost 200.
Okay, so you made 200K, you spent 100K, and you financed with a loan, I'm assuming, correct?
Yeah, we always want to leverage hard money. Hard money is just a responsible way of financing your business. The way I like to think about it is most properties are going to take you about 300,000 or so, 350,000 to do it if you do it without any assistance or hard money. But if you can leverage hard money, you can probably do 2.5 to 3 times as much business with the same capital. So as long as you approach it with a business mindset, you should be able to leverage that money, do 3 times the business. And even though you're going to give up some of that to cost of using hard money and paying those hard money costs, uh, making 50,000 on 3 properties versus 70,000 on one is better. So I always go the first approach, which is I'll make a little bit less, but I'll spread that risk over to several properties, and I'll be able to maximize my return.
Okay. So, okay, that's great. And what about your worst deal? I mean, what tell us about a deal that just really didn't go the way you planned.
Yeah, a couple of the deals that have kind of really gone south for us is not something we anticipated going into it, but it always comes down to the same thing. We always go into a deal trying to expand our horizon, trying to do something different, and it didn't really turn out so well. For example, we bought this property that needed full plans and permitting, and it was basically the house was condemned. It really needed to be just bulldozed and built from the ground up, but we were trying to get the plans approved, and it took us about a year and a half, and we just were getting nowhere. So we ended up selling the property at a loss, at a huge loss, just so we can move that capital and move on to something else. So to answer your question, it was just getting involved in a space where I wasn't 100% clear
What
on,
was the
and I,
what was the space or what was the property?
just doing new construction or an as build where you basically take a property and you add to the existing structure with permitting and plans. And it just took way too long, and we just had to bail on the project. This was
How much did you end
pre-COVID,
up losing?
about 100,000.
Wow. Okay. So definitely, someone who's looking at this video who maybe is looking to get into investing, like has to know, like, there are risks to this business and you're not always gonna win, but you want to obviously always have a plan and stay where you're kind of stay in your lane as what you know where you know what you're doing. If that makes
I,
sense.
I think I think a lot of people really don't give the respect that our business deserves. The same thing with your business. They think it's easy. They want to make a ton of money, but what nobody really talks about is how freaking hard it is to turn a profit, to actually grind and get something to the finish line, even when it's not, everything doesn't pan out exactly the way you want it to pan out. Everyone has this straight line approach of if I buy it, then I renovate it, then I sell it, then I make a profit, but very rarely is it a straight line approach. There's always going to be hiccups along the way, challenges, lessons, different things that you have to overcome. And a lot of people, when they start, they only do one flip, and then they move on to the next easy thing because they're looking for that easy fix. But most people that do this understand it's very hard. And as long as you can understand that, respect it, and continue to grind, you will then evolve to the next lessons that'll come your way. But there's always going to be that gap, that issue, that challenge, that lesson to overcome. And as long as you keep growing, you'll keep, building your business. Otherwise, the business will kill you. In a sense, you'll go out of business.
Okay, very interesting. So 300 properties or more that you've already fixed and flipped in your career. How would you say the breakdown is as far as like where you acquire the properties from? Like, is it half wholesalers? Get a little more specific with that.
When we first started, we were buying properties, at the auction. Then that evolved into buying properties from wholesalers, and then realtors, and then just people that deal with probates, just different referral sources,
So what's the
people that know.
breakdown?
Percentage wise, the majority is going to be wholesalers, but it's not one individual wholesalers. It's kind of like a revolving door. Like I'll do a like for example, I did a ton of deals with you years ago. Okay,
Mhm.
and then that trickled down to a couple. And then now we do a deal every now and then. Just depends on if things line up and if the deal makes sense to me and if you need you're able to get your spread. So it's just always finding where you're going to find that next deal from. The majority is off market, but every now and then it might be other realtors, other people that are bumping along these deals as they go. People usually need some type of problem fixed, and if listing it on the MLS with a realtor isn't the solution, then that's when we're the right fit for them. And usually it's paired up with someone like yourself that is close to that lead and says, "Hey, I got a solution for you. I can close on this property. I can take on that tenant. I can deal with the fact that your property won't get insurance because of the condition." And then we're kind of a perfect match because then you're able to sell that to me for an assignment, and then we're able to close on the deal.
So would you say 70, 60% wholesalers and the rest is from other sources, or what would you say roughly?
Probably 80, 89, 80,
Eight
90% wholesalers.
wholesalers. Oh, so mostly
Yeah.
wholesaler. Okay. And
Yeah.
so obviously you have a good amount of respect for the wholesaler industry because you understand that like what it takes to get these deals and how it's not so easy to find them.
I totally respect the business model. I know that you guys do what you do way better than I could ever try to do. I've tried it before. I've spent money on marketing. I've spent time trying to uh, do acquisitions. And what I found is that I don't have the time, energy, and I'm not naturally as good at it as someone like yourself. So I've decided to pair up, and partner with you and kind of support your business and try to make working with me as easy as possible, because ultimately that's all you want. You want a smooth transaction. You want to know who you're working with. You want to make sure we're not retrading the deal, midway in the transaction or backing out of the deal. You want somebody to perform. So I just try to make your life as easy as possible, and then hopefully we can make money together.
Okay. And and what would you say like the most amount? I know you said it's a revolving door. Like what would you say like how many deals was the most amount of deals you bought from one wholesaler or one wholesale company?
Gosh, it must have been about 40 or 50 transactions. Like one that comes to mind for me is like the Mathis twins. Like
Mhm,
I think the first deal they ever did,
mhm.
I bought from
So
them, and
you bought 40 deals, 40 or 50 deals
40
from them
plus.
from the Mathis twins. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. So they were just funneling you the majority of their deals at that time.
I mean, those guys do a lot of business, so I'm not sure if I was the majority of their deals, but I do know over the lifespan. I mean, we've been doing business for a long time. They've been in the business a long time, like you've been in the business a long time. So you start to add up 7, 8 years worth of business and
Are you still doing
relationships. And
deals with them today?
I mean, if they have an opportunity, we'll certainly look at it. And
Mhm.
we try to put a deal together. They're nationwide now, just like you are. And so every now and then they might have an opportunity, but at the end of the day, I'm not the person who's going to pay the highest price for the deal, but I am the easiest to work with, or one of the easiest to work with, and you'll know what you're dealing with me. A lot of times when you're working with a real estate investor, you're not sure if that person's actually an investor or they're just another wholesaler trying to wholesale your deal and trying to double close. And so transparency is key when you're dealing with your buyer, your real estate investor. So I try to be as transparent as possible, and when I do that, it leads to a good relationship long term.
And who was your mentor when you got into this? Like who inspired you to become a real estate investor and who taught you what to do when you first got started?
I mean, I didn't have anybody at the time when we first started. I mean, I think you and I started business around the same time. Um, there was no blueprint. It was just kind of us trying to like learn it as we go. So I made a lot of mistakes and I had to learn slowly. It took me a long time to kind of gather all the information that now basically I provide on a silver platter to most of my real estate mentees. I basically show them how to underwrite a deal. I show them how to, project for what the rehab is going to be. I show them how to manage contractors. I show them everything, which basically it's the blood, sweat, and tears over the last 8, 9 years and over the 300 transactions. that I condensed down and put it into a plan and a system for them. So it's just trial
Wow,
and error, just like you. I
that's
mean, you were
great.
starting
Hmm.
just driving around, just doing everything yourself, right? And now you got a pretty successful operation where it's a little bit more streamlined and a little bit more, it includes a lot more players and a lot more capital, correct?
That's correct. I mean, I want to ask you a couple more questions and then we'll kind of get into my side of it. But just to kind of continue on the train of thought I'm going on. But so you didn't really have a mentor. You made a lot of mistakes in the beginning. You kind of did a lot of trial by error. I did a lot of the same myself, I have to say. Um, what would you say, looking back on your journey, would be like if you could go back in time, like what would be like one thing that you think that you could have maybe done differently or changed that would have made you more successful?
So there's not one thing that I would have changed, but just back up on as far as the mentor thing goes. I think it all ties together. When I got my first house in 2003, and I was, basically blindly investing, not really knowing. I didn't understand sales. I didn't understand the real estate business. So I did have mentors along the way and coaches, but it was more on the real estate sales side of things, and kind of started to build my business acumen where I'm able to kind of understand like the numbers, like sales numbers and business numbers, like what percentages of profit should be, a good, bad, average, what it's going to take to generate, new business, stay in business, going through the Great Recession. So I did have coaches and mentors along the way. But as I transitioned into the real estate investing side of things, I kind of naturally started to put all those pieces together and all like the different books I've read and podcasts and everything I've consumed, and that's when I started to kind of try and build this thing that I knew other people did. They just didn't really have a duplicatable model. They kind of just would buy here, would buy there, but they didn't actually execute on their model of like, okay, I'm going to buy everything that fits into this buy box, and then I'm going to just either raise more capital or turn a profit and do it again, and just kind of really go into growth mode. I didn't really see anybody or know anybody that did that, so I had to kind of create that over time.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean,
Did that
I've
answer
been
your
in
question, or were you asking?
I think that it did answer the question. I mean, it was a little bit of a vague answer, like not too specific, but it was still a good answer. I would say that, from my experience, because I've been doing this like since 2016, and I've wholesaled at this point in my career probably over 600 or 700 houses, all throughout the United States, but mainly in Florida. And it's funny because you were one of the first investors I started selling properties 2 years ago, and I've seen a lot of faces enter and exit, like, buyers that we were selling them
Yeah.
deals and then they go and then you don't hear from them again. And you are one of the consistent people that I've seen in this industry for years and years. So for me, that makes it legitimate because you're not a fly-by-night investor. You've been doing this for years. You got the flips under your belt, and obviously you're still profitable throughout the years of doing this. So that's impressive. Because what I've noticed is that when I wholesale houses, it's very rare that you find someone like yourself where they're consistently buying at a high volume for many years. You don't see that too often. You see a lot of people that are doing a flip here, flip there, a wholesale deal here, a wholesale there, but you don't see too many consistent volume players in the industry, especially in
So
a
that's
competitive market like South Florida, which is basically South Florida is the one of the top two or three most competitive real estate investing markets in the country.
So a couple things. Number one, yeah, absolutely. Consistency, I hope, is one of the things that separates me from my competition and helps me, be successful. And another thing is a lot of people would tell me when I first got into this is, hey, stay away from Miami or South Florida's too expensive. And what I did was I said, look, if other people are doing it, I just got to become better at it, right? So I think the consistency along with, improving myself and my skill set helped me become consistent face in the business, and then the relationships that I've created over time have also helped me because when we've done each other favors and we came together instead of against one another and did deals together, that allowed us that confidence to then, when we are in a business deal together or a transaction, or when you call and ask for a favor, like we're cheering each other on. versus like, I'm going to make a profit at your expense. And I think
Mhm.
that's a lot of times in our business, people are always trying to win at somebody else's expense instead of figuring out a way to win together. And I think that's one thing we don't kind of talk about enough, and we don't kind of try to put at the forefront of every transaction. But we're in it for the same goal, and so we can get to the finish line together, and help whoever it is that had that need at the time. Then it's a win-win for everybody. But working
Exactly.
against each other makes things a lot more difficult and makes people never want to do business with you again. So why would you take that approach? Why would you backdoor somebody, when you send them a deal? Why would you try to take someone's escrow when they didn't realize that they, are taking on a problem that you didn't advertise from the beginning? Like, so these are the different things that I see over time, and I just try to kind of be different.
Okay, that's great. Um, yeah, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. So my question for you is, like, going into your business model, like, what's been the major driving point for you, like, to get to the point where you're at now, where you were just a guy in a car, and now you're out there growing the business and doing transactions at an impressive rate, where very little people are willing to invest that amount of capital, that amount of time, and hire that amount of people to do a wholesaling business. What makes you tick? What makes you want to achieve those type of numbers?
So I grew up outside of Philadelphia. I was Orthodox Jewish, very kind of very restricted type of upbringing. I had a lot of rules growing up. We did the Sabbath, and there was all sorts of rules, and it kind of drove me a little insane, like the way I was raised, because it was just very restrictive. And then, when I graduated college, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to go somewhere where I could really feel independent, but also experience something very different than I was used to. So that's when I moved to Miami. And then I actually got a sales job, even though I was an engineering major, I got a sales job. And I ended up getting my first commission check about 3 months in a sales job. It was $200, and I quit the next day just because I felt like it wasn't worth my time. And then when my brother was a loan officer at the time, and he said I should become a real estate agent. So I became a real estate agent, but I realized that every single person, or a lot of the people that I was meeting in Miami, were real estate agents. So I was a little bit intimidated as a young guy, 24 years old, not knowing anyone, not speaking Spanish, that I would be able to succeed quickly as a real estate agent. And then I saw some videos online where I'm not going to get into specifics, but there were some people that sounded just very unintelligent and very uneducated, talking about how much success they were having in the real estate wholesaling space, and they were making 50, 60,000 a month doing this. And I was instantly, someone who was very educated with an engineering degree from a top school, with smarter, sharp guy, pretty confident at that point in my life. I realized this was an opportunity for me to get in and make some money in a space where, yeah, there might have been some competition, but I felt that I was far more intelligent, sharper than the other people that I was competing with. Um, so, I got into the space. I joined a mentorship program. Dave Dinkle, I'm sure you know that is. He was my mentor at the time, and they had me making offers. And in the beginning, it was a lot of trial and error, like you were talking about. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know how to underwrite the properties. I wasn't sure about what to say on the phone to the agents that I was communicating with. But after screwing it up a bunch of times, I started to kind of figure out what worked. After getting a couple deals under my belt, I figured out what worked and what didn't. And at that point, in my life, I realized that if I wanted to make a lot of money, I realized I wanted to make a lot of money because I wanted to have that time freedom, the financial freedom to travel, the ability to, just get the things that I always dreamed about. And I knew that there was no reason why. I saw other people doing it in Miami, and I know there was nothing that they had that I didn't have, that I couldn't do it. So yeah, we started to do a lot of deals. Originally, it was me and my business partner, Jonathan, who moved down to work with me, and we were doing a ton of deals off the MLS. We did 400,000 in assignment fees in our first full year together off the MLS with basically no overhead. And then I eventually transitioned into working on my own and hiring a team, moving to my first office. And the first about 2.5 years in business, all we were doing was calling agents and putting in offers in the MLS. And we scaled that to 750,000 in our third year in revenue. And that was with me and basically two or three other people on my team. That was it. It was just a small little team doing that. And that was a great business model with very little overhead. But the downside to that model was that I didn't feel that we could scale to the level that I wanted to go. I didn't feel like we could scale to many, many millions. And I felt like it was a lot of legwork. It was a lot of legwork we're putting in on the ground, driving out to houses. It was a lot of legwork, and the spreads on the deals were not that were pretty thin. They weren't pretty. The spreads were we were making 5,000, 10,000, 12,000, 8,000, and that was great. But I didn't feel it was. I felt I could do better on the off market. There was more money to be made on the off market. And yeah, so originally when I got into the off market, we were doing mainly telecommunications. We were doing mainly like cold calling, some SMS marketing, some other stuff. That's what typically people do when they first get started because it's cheap. And it was great, but what I realized that we were having to go through a lot of leads to get deals. We were having to go through 50, 60, 70 leads to get a single deal done. And I started to hear about people having a lot of success with like online marketing, Google ads and that kind of thing. And then we started to do, experiment with that. And what we realized is that the amount of leads that it took to get a deal with online marketing was about 20% of the amount of leads that it took with telecommunications, that it was so much more scalable because I'm able to do a lot of deals with not that many leads. And the fact that we're able to do a lot of deals with not that many leads means I need less manpower on my team to grow because we don't need as many people to go through those leads. So that's pretty much what happened. And then about 2 years ago in 2021, we started doing heavy online advertising, Google ads, um, online marketing like that. And it just became this thing where it was almost too good to be true because we became a member of Investor Lift Cartel, which I'm not sure if you know what that is, but it's like the highest level of Investor Lift where we have access to the 4 million plus buyers list on there. And those buyers lists are nationwide. So we have buyers in all the major areas. And so we were able to run Google ads in all key markets. And then as soon as we get the property under contract, we were sending it out on our investor lift to our buyers, and we were getting bidding wars. And some of these deals were making 30, 40, 50, even 70 or 80,000 on a single transaction. So it was
So
this, huh?
how were you able to underwrite these deals in all these different markets?
So that's a challenge, and it's definitely something that we're constantly evolving. But what we're doing is that we're looking at mainly PropStream and Zillow for all the markets, and what we're first determining is what is the after repair value on the property. We're looking at the most similar size house and year built that was rehabbed, and we're looking at the pictures on Zillow, and we're determining, okay, this one's fully renovated, just sold 30 days ago for X price. So we're pinning our after repair value first. Then once we have our after repair value, we're looking at what are the lowest sales in that area in the past, the past 6 months or so, or 3 months, depending on how the market is at the time. And we are determining, okay, what are the lowest sales? So for example, if we have a house in California, in Los Angeles, right, and the highest sales are, let's say, $1 million are in that area, and then you have the low sales, and you've got houses, the lower end are selling for 650, right? So then we're taking that into account. So we got our range, our 650 to our $1 million, and then we're taking our house that we're looking at as a lead, and let's say the seller wants 750. Okay, so he's like towards the bottom of the range, but not all the way at the bottom. and we're taking the condition of our house. Usually we're trying to get photos from the owner and we're comparing it to the other houses that are selling in that price point. So for example, the house is like in really rough shape and we're compared to the other houses that just sold for the 750 the owner's asking for, and those houses are also in rough shape, then we know that we have something or we're close.
So in other words, the way you find it is by finding comparables that are in similar condition, and
Mhm.
then you know, hey, that's what they're trading at as an investor, and where investor maybe was making money in that market or whatever they're doing with that market. The point is, they're buying a distressed property, and then that gives you a range and idea. So if you're within that market, when you go to sell it to an investor, it's kind of like it should be a deal because it's kind of like what things are trading for in
That's
that condition.
correct. And there is some trial and error to that. I mean, not every deal is going to be perfect, but when you're spending a lot of money on marketing, you're going to have to take some chances. You're going to have to, you already have this lead. You've already paid money for the lead. You've already spent time working the lead. You might be only be 50% sure that you're going to find a buyer, but the alternative is if you don't lock it up, you're definitely not going to find a buyer. So you're going to have to take some chances and you're going to have some deals that don't work out, but that's part
What
of the game. That's part of the
what
game.
percentage? What percentage of deals would you say you're successfully selling and closing on that you lock up?
So it really changes with the market. I would say that last year when the market was very hot and I was extremely aggressive with the amount of money I was spending on marketing, we were probably closing about 45 to 55% of the properties we contracted. Okay. And we were very aggressive with the amount of money we were spending on marketing. And we're going into a lot of different markets that we had never done deals in. So yeah, we took a lot of chances, but we don't really see it as a big deal because we're not, necessarily losing any escrow or anything like that. So it's not a big deal.
So
Um,
now you're picking basically the markets you feel most confident in, that you can dispo and that you are familiar with, and that you know like transact.
So, I didn't get to this yet, but our business model over the past 6 months has completely changed. Our business model now is very different than it was 12 months ago. We are doing about 70 to 80% of our transactions as innovation deals, where we're actually getting the seller to sign an attorney in fact, which gives us the authorized to list. And with that document, that has completely revolutionized our business because we're doing deals where we're selling them to FHA buyers, we're selling them to conventional buyers, we're selling them to cash buyers on the MLS that have real estate agents. And so now that we have that tool in our toolbox, along with our investor lift membership, we're very aggressive on the areas we market to. We don't care if the house is in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, or if the house is in, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We've done deals in
Okay.
26 states, and obviously we have our core markets that we're used to doing deals in, but ultimately a deal is a deal is a deal. And if we have the correct marketing, we have the access to the buyers, it doesn't really matter where it is.
So basically, you've opened up your, let's call it your disposition channel, and it's no longer just selling it to an investor off market who needs to close on it with no contingencies. Now you've opened it up to, you have the leverage to list it on the MLS, sell it to a traditional buyer, do all these different things that'll essentially broaden the gap between the low end of the spectrum of price point and the retail end of the spectrum of price point, and then you're able to make money regardless. You don't have to just buy on the low end so you can sell it to someone like me who has to flip it and make a profit. You can actually pay up depending on the condition and then actually sell it to an end user, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And that has revolutionized our business and allowed us to be even more aggressive with what areas that we target and things like that. And the way Google advertising works is that the broader you go on your areas and the times that you market at, the cheaper you're able to get the leads. And that's why people that do a lot of Google ads, they go after many different markets because it's a lot more cost effective when you go into more markets.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So if you, the more finite you want to be, the more expensive. It's kind of like running commercials on TV, right? Where if you want to be at a specific time slot in a specific market, the cost is going to be much higher than if you don't really care when your time slot is or what market it's in. They'll kind of, segregate it down and slide you in wherever is needed essentially. So to you, the advertiser, it's a lot cheaper, and then to Google, they love it because you had a bigger budget,
That's
bigger
correct.
area.
And
Yeah.
and they're able to, we don't care if we're getting the leads at 2 p.m. or at 5 p.m., for example, as long as we're getting the leads, we don't care. So yeah, that's pretty much, how my business has changed over the years. And, it's, I'm hyper competitive. So for me, my goal is to be the biggest, or at least one of the biggest. I mean, we already are one of the biggest in Florida and one of the biggest in the United States at what we do. There's not many people that I've seen that have done more than that do more than us currently. Um, but I would say that the X factor that separates my company from other real estate investors and real estate companies is that I'm an excellent recruiter. I'm very good at finding the best possible talent to do each position, while most investor wholesalers are just trying to figure out how to set up their marketing. And it's like I'm not so concerned about like where we're doing deals. I'm concerned about who's handling my deals. Do I have the best acquisitions people? Do I have the best dispositions people? Do I have the best transactions people? Because ultimately, that's what's gonna be the difference between us getting a good result or a great result.
So you're looking at building your team first, and then the marketing will just be like turbo, fuel on top of the engine. But the engine is actually your people.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, if you don't have good people to handle the leads that you're spending money on, then you're not able to do it. Also, I'm extremely confident in my team, which allows me to be very aggressive on my marketing. Most people wouldn't have the balls to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars like I do on marketing because they don't have the team to handle that volume. Anyone could go on Google and go spend 100 grand on marketing, assuming they have the capital or access to the capital. But that's not the hard part. The hard part is not buying the leads. The hard part is how do we take these leads and get them through our team and make a great return on the other side with everyone being happy doing it.
So what would be the time from the minute you get the lead to the time somebody in your team is actually on the phone trying to convert them? What's usually the speed to lead expectation
We're
there?
talking to these leads usually within 2 to 3 minutes. I mean, it's very fast because the way our advertising is set up, we're doing about 80% Google advertising, 89% Google advertising now. So the way our advertising is set up is as soon as the lead comes in, either we're getting a phone call. Obviously, if it's a phone call, they're picking up the call on our system, or we're getting a web form, which is if they submit a web form, our agents are getting a text message directly to their cell phones when it comes in, and they're getting the email notification, and we're calling them back immediately. I mean, we have 4 agents full time right now that are handling these leads. So, if one of them, there's always someone available to handle that lead.
Do you have it like set up on a round robin, or do they all get blasted the lead at the same time, and whoever gets to it first gets the deal?
Well, it is kind of like a round robin. My team, obviously, if someone's busy, they're not at that moment, then it's going to hop to the next person. My team gets along very, very well, and they're all sitting right next to each other in the office, so they're constantly communicating as to who's next up. But they're very good, they're very good about being fair about the leads, which is why we have team members that have been on our team for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, because they're happy doing it and they work well together. In the past, we had agents where they would just hop on the lead and they wouldn't really be very fair to the other agents. They might take more leads, and that doesn't, in the long run, that doesn't work out because people get upset at each other.
Got it. So you have to have a respect and understanding that there's going to be enough to go around. You just have to, just kind of be ready.
That's correct. I mean, we're constantly looking at how many calls our agents are making, how much talk time they have. We're looking for minimum 2 hours a day of talk time. Because if they're in here for 9 hours a day on the phones and they don't get 2 hours of talk time, something's wrong.
So
Something's
you're
wrong.
tracking the amount of time they're on the phone, and then from there,
Correct.
that's the first metric, how much time they're on the phone. And the second metric is,
Well, the calls, but I mean, the calls is not so important. It's more about the talk time because the talk time reflects kind of how many quality conversations they're having. I could be tighter on the metrics, which is something that obviously I want to do. I'm more of a aggressive personality, very extroverted, but I'm not so detail oriented. Like I'm not very technical. Like that's not my natural state of being, which is why I hired my technical support guy who's right next to me, Nick. And he's very technical. That he's an IT guy, so he helps me with that because that's more his. He's good. He's better at that than I am. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so basically you're bringing in people to bridge your gap. You have strengths and you have, let's call it your superpower, right? Which is to think big and to be aggressive and to, you know, shoot for the moon. But then you also have to surround yourself with people that might, fill in that gap of your weaknesses, your blind spots, the areas that you might overlook and might bring you down, right?
Yeah, it's correct. And to expand on that, whenever we're looking for a particular position, we already know based on experience of doing this for years now as to what type of personality we're looking for, whether it be a patient personality, an aggressive personality, an analytical personality, whatever it is, we know what we're looking for, whether it's transactions, acquisitions, or IT or whatever dispositions, it doesn't matter. We know what we're looking for.
What do you think is the best personality to close a deal for you? What
So
personality type?
that's a common error in the industry because a lot of people will hire people that have like a used car salesman approach, someone that is very aggressive, pushy, impatient, someone like myself, someone like that. And that's the last thing you want. You want someone who's very patient, very calm, very even toned on the phone, and, very just making the seller feel comfortable and trust you. That is the key because we're
No,
buying these
is that no,
houses.
so?
Huh?
But is that a personality thing, or is that more
Yes.
of a sales training thing,
No,
or a
it's a
combination of both?
personality. It's both, but it's much like, for example, for myself, right? I'm not naturally patient. That's if
Mhm.
for me to be patient, I have to stretch to this side of the spectrum, right?
Well, would you
But if I
consider yourself a successful salesperson if you had to be? If your life depended on it, would you be a successful salesperson?
if I had to be, but the point is that if what I'm trying to get at is that if I'm like this and I'm looking for someone that's like this, I can stretch myself to here. But if someone's already like that naturally, it's gonna be way simpler for them. It's gonna be way simpler for them.
So what you're saying is it's easier for you to train someone who's naturally already calm and patient versus to try to get that go-getter, salesy type guy that sounds like a used car salesman because they haven't been trained properly. You're saying it would be easier to take somebody who's more calm, cool, collective and train them versus a guy who's like a wild stallion that just out of the gate is asking you to close without even really finding out whether or not you need to sell.
That's correct. That's correct. It's like, why would I want to get someone and bring them from here to there when I could already just get someone who's already here?
That's a great point because I think many sales recruiters are they kind of feel like, oh, this person's a closer, this person is exactly what we need, and then they don't work out, right? And I
Hmm.
think part of it is you have to be willing to be coached. You have to train, and you're not as good as you think you are, right? When you first start. And it's going to take a lot longer than you think it's going to take. And it sounds to me like what you're telling me is that the person who's a little more calm, collective, and cool already goes into it probably expecting that versus that sneaky snake oil salesman figures, hey, I got what it takes, and within my first month of working with Ben, I'm gonna make $10,000. And if I can't make
Hmm.
$10,000, and I'm gonna go find that next shiny object, and then you just wasted a bunch of time trying to train this person versus with someone who's more coachable.
I'll tell you a little story. So
Tell me.
just to put that in perspective, I mean, we have a guy named Jason on our team who worked for another investor called InvestQuest Partners for 4 years before he worked here with us. Yeah, you have you heard of InvestQuest Partners or no?
Are those the people that have those billboards that say "We buy ugly houses"? No,
No, no, no. They're not. I thought you would know them. They were a big Miami wholesale a few years ago. They don't exist anymore. But regardless,
no, I don't know.
when I first interviewed him, he didn't strike me as a good salesman because he was very calm, very patient, very laid back, which is the opposite of me. So I was like, but he told me he had that experience and he was an educated guy, has a master's degree from University of Miami. So I knew there was potential there, but I didn't see it right off the bat as, this guy's going to be a rock star. But I definitely wanted to hire him just because he had so much positive experience from the past, if that makes sense. So I brought him on thinking he was going to be good, but I didn't realize he was going to be incredible the way that he is. And we get him on the phone, and he closed a deal on his second day working with me, a deal in Texas. We ended up making 15 grand on it. And then, every time we got a hot lead, he would just get on the phone, stay with them for 60 minutes on the phone, making them feel super comfortable and getting the contracts, locked up quickly. And that flipped my whole thing. I was because he was so patient. I was like, okay, we need more people like that. That's a winning personality for this role. And then, he actually led my team in sales last year, 1.14 million in revenue generated just by him in sales. So,
Wow.
he was a big
How
winner
many
for
hours
me.
is he working a week, would you say?
42, 43 hours a week. That's it.
And how much would a salesperson like that earn on your team?
So he made about 170,000 last year.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
And he
So
never has to go anywhere. He's just basically virtually calling, staying accountable, coming to the meetings, but for the most part, virtually on the
he's
phone.
just coming to work and making the calls. I mean, he's not he maybe went out to two houses. I mean, these houses all over the place. I mean, the houses aren't.
Wow,
We
that's
did.
impressive.
He did well, last year he did 100,000 spread in Texas on a house that we wholetailed. He got his commission on that. We had an $80,000 assignment fee on a mobile home in the desert in California. So I mean, no, he's never seen these properties or the homeowners.
Wow, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Um,
So basically, you found him. He was successful, and then you basically took a model and you built it around. Like, hey, how can we create more sales guys like this? Because clearly, he's got something magical. Because he's closing a deal second day. What's your average agent or salesperson? How long does it take them before they actually close their first deal on average?
it depends on the agent, but if they're a successful agent, like someone that we actually retain and they stay in our team for a long period of time, they usually get their first deal in the first, I would say, 7 to 10 days.
Oh, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. I mean, that obviously takes time to close, but they get the contract locked up in the first 7 to 10 days. We have another girl named Cara who's been on our team for like 3, 4 months now. She locked up her first contract on the eighth day. We ended up making $63,840 off that deal.
Wow.
And then we had another girl last year who was not with us anymore, Natalie. She locked up her deal on the second day, and we made 64 grand on that deal. So it's not so much, like I said, about it's not so much about like the acumen as to like knowing the real estate knowledge. It's about, can they talk to people on the phone? Do the people like them on the phone? That's what we care about more. We had another agent who was on our team. He actually was on our team this week. Um, he he came over from another wholesale company. The guy did 1.25 million in sales for the other wholesale company. So we were very excited to bring him on board. And but no matter who we bring on board, we always they have to go through our model and our system. So we had him calling back some of our cold call leads, which is obviously not the best leads. And he was very impatient, very pushy kind of guy like me. And he actually quit on the morning of the second day, even though he was $1 million closer his last job. He was so impatient with our system and the way we were doing things that he quit on the second day. And we were actually happy when he quit just because we knew that even if he was good for the other company, he wasn't a fit for our model.
Right. Yeah, you know what works. And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, he comes in there and on the second day he's quitting. It just kind of shows that just did for whatever reason didn't buy in, didn't want to buy in. But it takes a lot of your time and money and effort to train and coach these people. So you want to have someone who's going to have buy-in, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
what's your culture like? Like, do you have culture? Like, what would you say your secret is to kind of building this environment where people come in and they get the stickiness factor?
I think that when people come in my company, they feel that they're part of a family. We're very close. Everyone, we joke around in the office. It's not corporate. We have a little basketball hoop in here, so we're always having a good time. We have our music on, so it's not a very uptight environment. They don't feel like they're going to work every day. Like they don't feel like, oh shit, this is gonna be fucking boring. They know that every day, you know, it's gonna be there's gonna be jokes, they're gonna be laughing, and it's not gonna be too serious, and that they can be themselves at work, and I'm not gonna care whether they curse or whether they anything like that. Like we can make jokes and have a good time because ultimately, if you're spending 43 hours a week in an office with 10 other people and you don't feel comfortable, you're not gonna want to go there every day.
I love
Um,
that.
so yeah, so I keep it very laid back, but also my people almost everyone on my team is working mainly on commission. Obviously, some of them have some salaries, but they're working mainly on commission. So they see the potential for growth. They see the potential commissions that are coming in. So they're focused without me having to constantly push them. Um, which,
You're motivated.
yeah, they're motivated because they know that if they work hard, they're going to be rewarded for it and they have room to grow. As soon as someone feels stagnant, as soon as someone feels like they it doesn't matter how hard they work, they're not going to be appreciated for that. That's when you see people not giving it their best effort.
Got it. It's amazing, man. Sounds like
Yeah,
you're really kind of building, a business, not just to stay, but to take over, and it starts with the culture, starts with knowing the type of people you want to recruit, you want to work around with, right? You don't just take on anybody. You take on people that you feel you can help them achieve a certain level, and they also have to feel like they're not coming to work, right?
that's correct. I mean,
That's cool.
if they're not looking forward to it, then it's not going to last. But I mean, I have great retention in my employees. We have, I've got Christina, who's done a couple deals with you. You bought a deal with her recently, in Miami. She's been with me 4 years. I have Jason and Bobby. They've been with me 2.5 years. I've got Angie 2 years. I've got you know, Daniel, who you probably know, on my team. He's been with me since August of last year. So people on my team, they're really they see my vision, they see how hungry I am to grow, and what they're realizing is if I come to work and I give it my best effort, there's no way I'm not going to make money because Ben is just so motivated to make money that I'm going to make money trickling off from him if I if I put my best effort in.
Awesome, dude. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what's that top you were talking about before? You like you want to be the top, you want to be the biggest. What numbers? What are the numbers behind that to get to that point?
So, I'm always stacking myself up against other wholesalers. Obviously, because I'm an investor with cartels, so I see some of the other wholesalers in the country, and then I know Property Force, which is my office at Miami Gardens. There's in Hallandale Beach. It's not too
Yeah.
far. And I know like Property Force, they've been doing this like 15, 16 years. I think they do. I don't know their exact numbers, but I know they probably do about between like 15 and 20 million a year in wholesale fees, which is obviously extremely impressive. But they also have a team much larger than mine. They have a team probably about 3 or 4 times, actually probably 5 or 6 times the size of my team. So relatively, like the amount that they're doing versus the amount that we're doing, I think that pound for pound, we're actually doing more volume than them, given the amount of people that we
So
have.
that's the target. The
Yeah,
target is to take take them down or not
we
down, but
will we
basically
will take them down. Yeah, we will. I think
gotcha.
that it's
And
and
then what's next when you get there? What's the next step? Just sell everything and retire?
I don't know. No, I'm very passionate about this and I love doing it. Oftentimes I think about exiting my business and trying to make it so that it's more, I don't have to show up every day. But ultimately, I love coming to work. I love working on my team, and I don't see myself doing that yet.
Ever
Um,
thought about franchising?
it may, from a business perspective, it maybe makes sense, but it's not my vision. It's not what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to build a massive corporation under one roof where we reinvent what's possible in this industry.
Cool.
So
Amazing, man.
yeah, but yeah, that's it's very exciting, and yeah, I think that like last year about 3.5 million in sales. This year, honestly, a little bit slower than we'd like to be. We have about 850,000 closed.
Well,
I
we have
think
a the market's contracting, right? So we have less deals closing year over year, and so there's
right,
less to go around.
it's harder for sure. Um, so I mean, basically what I'm saying is this year I think we'll get to about 5-6 million if everything goes right. And I think next year is going to be a big year. We're actually
So
switching
you're
offices.
so far you're at what? How much are you at right now to this
850,
point? So
850.
you're at 850 and the goal is five?
Yes, I know. So we're not on track for that, but our first 2 months of this year were very slow, and the amount of deals in our pipeline right now is growing quickly. Like
Okay.
we have like over, I think we have about 40 deals in escrow with a buyer in place, and we have about another 40 deals with no buyer. And like we're growing. So because in wholesaling, especially the way we do it now in novations, there is like a 60 to 90-day period for the deals to close. And you have a
Right.
lot of deals that are like probates and things like that. So even though our revenue number isn't that great,
You have a pipeline.
we have a very big pipeline right now. Very big. I
Got it.
think that next month in June, I think we'll be over 500,000 next month, and I think by July we'll be trickling towards like 600,000 or 700,000.
Wow. So you're
Yeah.
still shooting for that 5 million mark, even though you're behind. You got the pipeline to get you there. And at the end of the day, if you get to the end of the year and you fall short, if you still have the remaining in the pipeline, I mean that's still a win, right? So do you count like what's in the pipeline along with closed, or you just count closed?
Oh, well, the pipeline, there are a lot of problems that come up, like title defects and things like that, that prevent you from closing. So I count it, but I don't count it nearly as strongly as the actual closed sales. But if
Makes
I
sense.
see that my pipeline is growing, then I look at it as like, okay, if this is in my pipeline, there's probably 80% chance, 90% chance it's going to close. So I take that into account.
Cool.
But ultimately, we're moving offices in 2 weeks, which is going to
Where are you
allow us to
moving to?
hire same building, just a bigger office.
Where's your
Uh,
building at?
we're Miami Gardens, right off of 95, right off
Oh,
exit
nice.
12. Yeah.
Now, do you do that because it's accessible to everyone, or you specifically want to be in the area? Like, what's the reasoning for Miami
The
Gardens?
reason for Miami Gardens is because we're able to get a good price for the office because it's not like a super exclusive area. It's very accessible. We're able to recruit people from Broward County, where you have a lot more people that speak good English than you do in Miami. And we're able to recruit people from North Dade County. So we're basically getting our team members from North Dade and Broward County. So that area for recruiting is a lot stronger than, like, for example, before we were in downtown Miami, further south, it was more difficult to
Very
get people.
complicated to get to. Yeah,
Yeah, very hard to
unless
get
you live
people
there.
from it's very hard to get people from like Broward County. You got a lot
Right,
more because we do deals all over the country, so we need people that can communicate with people from all over the country.
right.
Yep. So
Cool. Makes sense.
it's definitely strategic as far as where we moved our office to for growth.
So where do you see this market going in the next 12 months based on what you see so far out there every day?
It's a little bit difficult to tell. I think it depends a lot on what happens in the election. But you're talking about before the election. If I mean, honestly, it's probably going to go south. It's probably going to go south. I don't know about Miami-Dade County specifically. I mean more on like a national basis because that's what we target. It's probably going to go down. I don't know if it's going to go down 10% or if it's going to go down 25%. I think it really depends on how they handle the debt ceiling. I think it depends on if they continue to raise interest rates or not, things like that. But overall, I think in the next 12 months, we're going to see a downturn. Whether it's going to be a strong downturn or a light downturn, hard to say. But if the next election, if we get a Republican president, I think we're going to see a huge bounce back in the market and a big, a very, very strong real estate market increasing if we get a Republican president. If we get Biden again, it could be potentially an absolute disaster.
So
What's your take?
my take is I actually think it's going to go up nationwide over the next 12 months. Okay.
Okay.
And let me tell you why. These are my speculation plays. Number one, everyone is expecting it to go down. Usually, when everyone thinks one thing, the market does another. So the fact that everybody's kind of waiting for the next shoe to drop, I think that's going to be a trap. And then all of a sudden, people are going to be like, "Oh shit, the market's going up," and they're going to all flood into the market. Number two, election year. I think it's good for the current administration to look like the heroes. So they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that the market doesn't crash too dramatically. So they've created the problem with inflation, and now they're going to be the heroes to solve it. So I think they're going to have a play in that. And all of a sudden, something's going to happen, and our market's going to have a pop. And number three, the amount of inventory that we have is so small and the amount of transactions contracting. I think this is a trend that's not going to be fixed within a matter of a year. So we're going to have this play out. We're going to have that painful contraction of deals happening, and the people that want to buy homes are going to have no choice but to pick from what's available, and there's going to be less of them available than there are people buying. So essentially, they're going to squeeze the prices upwards. So as long as you're at a price point where you don't have to sell your property in order to buy a property, I think those price points are going to appreciate, like, basically like a magnet pulling the prices up, because you're tired of renting, you're tired of being in a duplex. Everybody's buying a house now. Very few people are actually putting those houses up for rent. So then you have a real small supply. If you want to live in a single family home with a yard, with a white picket fence, you're going to have to buy. And unfortunately, you're going to have to compete for those buyers. So I think that in the next year, we're going to have a pop in equity, and the price are going to go up.
Wow. Okay. And who do you think is going to end up winning the next election? If you what would you say? Would you guess is going to win,
I
or
mean,
who would
look,
you predict to win?
I love the debate, and it all depends on how bad the economy gets. If it's what you're saying, that it's going to be bad next year, it's going to be hard for the current administration to win again, because it's going to be just easy bait for the new people to come in and say, "Hey, they screwed it up. We're here to fix it," right? But if we have a really good year, it's going to be hard for the current, for the new party, for the Republican Party, to win against the Democrats, because then they're going to be like, "Hey, we were dealt this mess, and now we fixed it, and look how great we're doing." So it's going to be hard to say. For me, obviously, I'm fiscally conservative. I want lower taxes. I want the ability for the states to make their decisions and not the government just kind of overpower and over regulate everyone. So I'm a Republican because of those reasons. Not that I don't like the socially liberal sides of decision making. I want the flexibility and the freedom for people to be open minded, but I just don't want to have to overpay, right? So I want to be able to pay my fair share in taxes. I want to be able to have the U.S. continue to innovate and grow and be the leaders worldwide. But the only way that's going to happen is to continue to go to our capitalist fundamentals, which is, allowing people the space to innovate, grow, and to make a profit without being, overly taxed.
So, to summarize, what is your prediction? Who do you think is going to win?
Like I said, it depends on if the market goes the way I think it's going to
But
go.
you predict it's going to go well, so that means you think that the Democrats are going to win.
I think they might pull it off
Okay.
because of what I
Okay.
just said. Now, if the market doesn't go well and the market goes sideways or down, then it's like there's a chance for the Republicans to jump in. But it really comes down to, look, 40% of the of our population is going to vote Republican no matter what. You're going to vote who you're going to vote for no matter what. I'm going to vote for who I'm going to vote for no matter what. And then you got the 20% in the middle. That 20, or maybe even 10%, might be as little as 10%. That 10% is going to decide who we pick. And if the candidate is, let's say, Trump, and people just hate him, that 10% hates him, then he's not going to win. But if the candidate is DeSantis, and all of a sudden people are like, hey, I like DeSantis, he's a little more polished. I like what he's done in Florida. You know, I agree with his approach to government style, then we might have a chance to winning. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. My prediction is, I hope I'm wrong, but I think the Democrats might pull it off if the market does well in the next 12 months.
I agree with you in the sense that I think the Democrats will pull it off. So you think Biden will be representing them, obviously, or you think someone else?
I just can't imagine how this guy is going to be able to represent the country for another 4 years. He's like, he's like a corpse. He's just old and he's falling off of,
But
going up to the
do you
plane.
think he's going to win or you think he's going to lose?
I think the it comes down to who's the worst candidate, right? Because it's not like, oh, I want to choose Biden, he's great. It's like, no, I don't want to choose the other guy, so I'll choose Biden. And unfortunately, this is the way elections work in the US. It's always like who I hate the most, not who I like the best. So going in that approach, you might win again. I don't know, what is the plan for Democrats? Do they plan on bringing somebody else? How could they possibly say, hey, we're not going to have Biden, we're going to slide another candidate in there? How is that going to even possibly work? I just don't see a scenario where they bring somebody else in and kind of push them to the side. What do you think?
I agree. I agree. I'm not very happy about it, but I do agree. Okay. So you think that Biden will win, and who do you think that Trump will win represent the Republicans, or you think that it'll end up being DeSantis?
I mean, every time I hear something, is I hear something different, and I really don't follow politics as much as I follow like the real estate market. But I just don't think the guy wants to go away. I think that he's just going to keep coming back and competing and trying to get reelected. He just doesn't take a hint. He doesn't say, okay, fine, I give up. I've done enough. And I see a lot of people like the same people that were like, what an idiot. I can't believe he screwed up, and then they didn't vote for him. Now they're thinking, well, a lot of things that he said is actually coming to fruition. So even though I didn't like him, I can't disagree with the policies and his approach and the things he said. Like, he spoke a lot of truth. He might have had the worst tact
Delivery.
than any president. He might have just been like a circus, but what he talked about was very coherent and very, like, thought out. It felt at the time like he was just this degenerate guy who was just saying whatever the hell he wanted to say, but it was very calculated. He's actually pretty, he's a brilliant guy. It's just a lot of people give him a bad rap because he just doesn't have very good tact. But he's not very presidential. But what he says is like spot on. I mean, and a lot of smart people agree, a lot of dumb people agree. And it's going to be interesting to see, when the primaries come out, what's going to happen, because the right or the left, neither of them like him, right? So the people who want to control who gets elected don't like him. He's too unpredictable. And then the average person loves him because he's got nothing to prove other than the fact that he loves his country and he wants to be number one. He wants to win. Who doesn't want to win?
Okay. Okay. So you didn't answer the fucking question. You think he's going to win?
Rule number one in sales: never answer the question. Do I think he's going to win? No.
Like win the Republican primary?
I think the only way he wins is if the Republicans really screw up, because DeSantis is slated to be able to beat him easily in the primaries unless something happens and he screws it up. Because it's like kind of like the Heat.
So
The Heat are
who
the
do
eighth
you
seed.
think is going to win? Who do you think is going to win?
Listen to me. The Heat are the eighth seed, and they plummeted number one Milwaukee. They plummeted the Knicks. And now they got the Boston. It's only game one, but the Boston's a little bit, on their heels now. Uh, Trump is the eighth seed. Okay. DeSantis is supposed to win by all metrics, but Trump is the eighth seed, and he's coming in there with the
But
culture.
Trump is actually
With
favored. Trump is favored right now.
I don't think so. I think most of the people you talk to, they're going to say, no, Trump is not going to win. And that's why he might win.
All
I
your
don't think he's going
semantics
to win.
aside, who do
I
you
don't think
think is
he's
going
going to
to
win.
win the Republican primary?
DeSantis.
You think DeSantis is going to win? If it's DeSantis versus Biden, you think Biden still pulls it out? Most
Um,
likely.
razor thin margin. I think Biden pulls it off.
Okay.
But if it
Who would
was
you want to
Trump,
see?
but
Who
it,
would you want to see as
but
president if it was up to you? Who would you want to
Trump,
see?
Trump, because here's the thing: if it were Trump versus Biden, I think Trump pulls it off.
So
Crazy
so
enough.
if you could have any of the current candidates as president, and you could just decide because they gave you that power, who would you decide? Who would you want?
I think that DeSantis has really got all the things that I would want in a president. I think his the way he approaches it with policy, the guy's pretty squeaky clean. He's a family man. For me, he just strikes everything that I would want in a president. He's younger, you know. Um, it makes more sense to me. Not to say that I don't like Trump because Trump does a lot of things that keeps people on their heels, and he just kind of approaches things with, I'm going to make change. I don't care that it's supposed to take me 8 years to implement what I want. I'm going to do it on year one. And he's just like constantly like just hammering all his things, through. I like that. I like that approach. You feel like he's making progress. And that's what this country's all about. And that's what we got to get back to, just making progress and not getting just fat and happy with our past performance. We got the rest of the world, or part of the world, is trying to decentralize the dollar, trying to take us out of the decision making, trying to make the rest of the world more communism. And unfortunately, I think that Trump is one of the few, if not the only candidate that can really dramatically shift things back into our favor, and we can actually start to win again.
Okay. Okay. So you would rather have DeSantis, but you like Trump as well, is what I'm gathering from that statement. Is that correct or
I
not?
wish they were both. I wish we can have them both be president.
Okay. So
Can you imagine a scenario where DeSantis was president? I know this can't happen. DeSantis president and Trump vice president. How awesome would it be to have a vice president like Trump? But then again, the guy would never be a vice president to anybody.
I mean, I'm hoping we get Trump and then DeSantis in the future. That would be my ideal scenario. But I think that, you know, I wanted to ask you one. So let's say we get Trump somehow again. I would be fucking thrilled. But let's say we get Trump again as president, manages to pull it off and win. Do you see the economy in that situation? How do you see the economy going?
Look, first off, let's address something. Um, uh, Everyone always loves, a comeback story, an underdog story. Somebody not gaining revenge, but basically being triumphant. And what more of a triumphant, successful story can you think of somebody who basically get got tried to get kicked out of presidency from the very first day he announced he was going to be president, and then he actually became president. And the first day he was able to get thrown out, he got thrown out, and he came back and won it again. I mean, I would love to see him do that, and then in turn, I think that would just kind of put us back on the map. It would even the playing field, and the sky's the limit. Anything would be possible, I feel, with him being president, even though it's going to be a short period of time. And I agree with you. I think DeSantis will have his time. It might be too early for him to jump in. He's got, a long political career, and timing might be a little off, because if we get him now, we might only get him for a short time. But if we get him later, we might be able to get him for the full 8 years. So I might, if I had to choose, I might want to push him off later on down the road to have him be president, and I'll take Trump, for the next 4 years.
Okay, but back to my question. If Trump
I'm flip
wins,
flopping. I'm flip flopping.
if Trump wins, what do you see in the market? What do you predict in the market?
Boom, a boom. It has to be. We're gonna have a boom in the market. I think it's gonna be instant. It was stimulus in different ways. Okay, he's gonna stimulate the market in different ways, from a capital perspective, from a competing perspective. You know what I mean? He'll do things to even out the playing field so we're not overpaying, for to import things, and we're evening the playing field when we purchase things or when we sell things to other countries. He'll create the fear back into like we don't know what he's gonna do. When you're predictable, your competition's able to make big moves, and that's what's happening right now. The world is making big moves because we're very predictable, and they know exactly what they're getting with Biden. They're not going to know what the hell's going on with Trump, and keeping them on their heels, I think, is going to put us back on the map. It's going to boom our economy, and it's going to do 180 from what everybody thinks. Everyone thinks we're supposed to have a recession. Everyone thinks it's time, but you just don't know. When he comes back, everything is off the table. Anything is possible.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I dream about that sometimes. So, was there any? I mean, we had a pretty good conversation here. I think we've gone on already for over an hour. It was great getting with you today. But did you have any last comments or questions that you wanted to mention to me?
I think we should do it again. I think we should have, a list of questions that, from people or from just talking points, and let's just hammer it through. I think we have a lot we want to give as much as we receive, and I think we grow together because we contribute and we become part of this ecosystem that we call, real estate investing. So I'm glad that you invited me on to chat with you, and I think this is the beginning of hopefully many series of conversations about business, about the market, and about the United States.
Awesome, awesome. I think we should do probably like an Instagram live thing that we can have people asking us questions live. That would be cool.
Yes,
That'd be cool. But yeah, let's definitely do something soon. It was great getting with you today, Ralph. I'm gonna chop up the video and we'll be in touch. All right, my friend.
sounds good, brother. Thanks,
All
Ben.
right. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.
I'm in.